My son was rushed to the emergency room. I texted my mom. Her reply? We're busy with Margaret. Then she mocked my son. So I canceled their mortgage payment, their car loan, and every bill I was covering for them. Hey Reddit. Before we start, I just want to say that this is our new channel, and we're really working hard to bring you the best stories. So make sure to subscribe to get us 1,000 subscribers very soon. Let's start the story. When I got the call that my son had collapsed during gym class and was being rushed to the emergency room, the world around me stopped. I dropped everything at work and drove like a maniac to the hospital. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the doctor on the phone. My 8-year-old boy, Liam, had a seizure out of nowhere. He'd never had one before, no medical history, no warnings. Just collapsed, convulsing in front of his classmates. When I finally got to the ER and saw him hooked up to tubes and monitors, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. He looked so small on that hospital bed. I felt helpless and terrified. I sent out a group text to my immediate family, my mom and dad, my sister, Margaret. I said simply, Liam is in the ER. He collapsed at school. I'm at the hospital now. I expected at least a bit of concern or a phone call, especially from my parents. They've always claimed to love their grandkids, and I honestly believe that if something serious happened, they'd drop everything and be there. But no. 5 minutes later, I got a response from my mom. We're busy with Margaret. She needs us today. Hope he feels better soon. I stared at that message in disbelief. Busy with Margaret? My fully grown sister who lives 5 minutes away and works part-time at a boutique? What could possibly be more important than a child in the ER? My sister wasn't dying. She wasn't in crisis. She probably needed help moving a coffee table or picking out curtains. Knowing her, I didn't reply. I sat there, holding Liam's little hand, trying not to cry in front of him. His face was pale, and he was drifting in and out of sleep while the doctors monitored him. It felt like my whole world had crumbled, and the people who should have been holding me up were nowhere to be found. A few hours later, I got another message from my mom. I thought maybe she'd reconsidered. Maybe she was finally on her way. Instead, it was a picture of Margaret's new living room setup with a text that said, "Doesn't it look great?" We spent the whole day helping her rearrange everything. She's so stressed lately, poor thing. I snapped. I didn't even bother replying, because if I did, it would have been nuclear. I showed the message to my wife, and even she, usually the peacekeeper, was furious. But the real breaking point came the next morning. Liam was stable, but needed to stay in the hospital for more tests. The doctors suspected a neurological issue, and we were terrified. I called my mom just to keep her informed. She answered with a cheerful, "Hi, sweetie," like nothing had happened. I told her what was going on, that the doctors were doing MRIs and blood work, and that we were scared out of our minds. Her response? Well, kids are resilient. Maybe he's just faking it to get out of school. You know how dramatic he can be. She chuckled. She laughed. At the thought of my terrified little boy faking a seizure, I was stunned into silence. I ended the call immediately. My hands were shaking. Now here's the part one haven't told you yet. For the past 7 years, I've been paying my parents' bills. Not because they're poor, they just never saved well, and when my dad's business went under, I stepped in. I covered their mortgage. I paid off their car loan. I even helped them consolidate and pay down their credit card debt. I took on this burden quietly, never asking for anything in return, just trying to be a good son. But that day, something inside me cracked. I went home that night, logged into every account with my name on it. Their mortgage? I removed my auto payment and called the bank to let them know I would no longer be covering it. Their car loan? I stopped the monthly transfers. Every credit card I helped them co-sign. I canceled my responsibility and revoked my access. I didn't even tell them. I just did it. 3 days later, my mom called me in a complete panic. Apparently, she tried to use her card at the grocery store and it declined. Then she got a notice about a late mortgage payment. She called, demanding to know what was going on. I told her flat out, "You made your priorities clear. You chose Margaret's living room over your grandson's health. You laughed at his seizure. I'm done supporting people who show no compassion for my child." She started crying and yelling, saying I was being dramatic and cruel, that they needed that help, that Margaret was going through a lot. But I didn't budge. I reminded her that Margaret has never paid a cent to help them, and yet she gets all their time, their sympathy, their concern. Meanwhile, the moment my son needed them, they mocked him and ghosted us. I told her she can ask Margaret for help now. She hung up in tears, and I haven't heard from them since. And here's the kicker. I thought I'd feel guilty. But I don't. Not even a little. Liam is still undergoing tests. We're meeting with neurologists and trying to stay strong, but every day is a new wave of fear. But at least now, I'm pouring my energy into my family, the one that actually cares, instead of bleeding myself dry for people who clearly don't. But just when I thought things had finally settled, I found out something about Margaret that flipped everything upside down. And that's where it gets even worse. The truth about Margaret changed everything, and so did what my parents did next. A week after cutting my parents off financially, the silence from their side had turned from a quiet relief into a looming unease. I didn't regret a thing. Liam was still in and out of appointments, but we were managing. My wife and I had drawn closer, stronger. My focus had shifted fully to my family, to the one that mattered. But I couldn't shake this strange gut feeling that something wasn't quite over yet. That's when my cousin Jenna called me out of the blue. She sounded hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should even be talking to me. But her voice had that strained edge of someone holding back too much for too long. She said she'd heard through the grapevine what happened with my parents and Margaret, and she needed to tell me something. I braced myself. Jenna told me that Margaret wasn't just getting help rearranging her living room that day. In fact, Margaret had just taken out a massive loan in my father's name. Apparently, she'd been pressuring them for months, saying she needed financial help to expand her boutique into a second location. My parents, ever eager to please their golden child, co-signed everything for her. And I found out that while I had been paying their mortgage and car loans, they had been quietly backing Margaret's business dreams, draining what little credit they had left to keep her afloat. I was stunned. All this time, they let me believe they were barely scraping by. I was covering thousands in bills while they handed over their limited financial safety net to my sister so she could open a boutique she could barely manage. And when I asked for a sliver of compassion during my son's medical crisis, I got a shrug and a text about curtains. But it didn't end there. Jenna also told me that Margaret had been telling everyone in the family that I was blowing things out of proportion. That Liam just had a fainting spell, and I was using it as an excuse to lash out. According to her, I had a history of being dramatic and controlling, and now I was throwing a tantrum because I wasn't the center of attention. That was the final nail in the coffin. A few days later, my dad showed up at my house. No call, no warning, just knocked on the door one evening with this tired, drawn-out face like the weight of the world was crushing him. My wife opened the door, and when I saw him standing there, I almost shut it again in his face. He said he wanted to talk, that he missed his grandson, that things had gotten out of hand. I let him in, not because I forgave him, but because I wanted to hear him say it all out loud. And he did. He admitted they hadn't handled things well, that Margaret had been leaning on them for years, that they always felt like she needed them more because she couldn't manage on her own, and I was always the strong one who never asked for help. But then he said something that completely infuriated me. He said, "We didn't come because we didn't want to get in the way. We thought maybe you and your wife had it under control. And Margaret really did need help that day, emotionally. She gets overwhelmed easily." That was it for me. I told him I didn't want their help now. I didn't want their guilt. I wanted distance. I said if he and my mom couldn't treat my son like he mattered, if they could make excuses for abandoning him when he needed love and support the most, then they didn't deserve to see him at all. He asked if I was really going to keep Liam away from his grandparents. I said I wasn't keeping Liam from anything. They made themselves absent all on their own. He left after that, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Since then, they've tried a few times. A birthday card for Liam that showed up late with a gift card in it. A voicemail from my mom saying she hopes Liam is feeling better. But it all feels hollow now. Empty gestures from people who only acted once the money stopped flowing. As for Margaret, her second boutique closed 3 weeks after it opened. She couldn't pay the rent, couldn't manage the staff, and from what I hear, she's blaming everyone but herself. She hasn't reached out to me once. Not to apologize, not even to defend herself. And that silence, honestly, is a blessing. My wife and I sat down and had a long talk about it all. About boundaries, about trust, about protecting our little family unit from anyone, even blood relatives, who bring harm instead of help. We decided to move. Not out of town, but far enough to put real space between us and them. A fresh start. A place where Liam can grow up surrounded by people who truly care. Where we don't have to look over our shoulders waiting for the next manipulation or guilt trip. This whole situation taught me something I wish I'd learned sooner. Being family doesn't give someone the right to hurt you repeatedly and still expect your loyalty. Sometimes, protecting your child means cutting off the people you once called your support system. And once you see the truth of who someone really is, no amount of guilt or apologies can unsee it. So I chose my son, and I don't regret a damn thing.